When you get dressed in the morning, what's the first thing that you think about? For a lot of people, it would be what shoes they're gonna wear that day. My name is Nate, and I would call myself a sneakerhead considering the surplus amount of shoes that I have. Now, a lot of my shoes have a lot of value and importance to me for my own particular reasons, but a lot of these shoes have their own important history behind them on why they're so important or successful or like a staple in fashion history. Today, I'd like to run you through a brief history on one of my favorite shoes, the Nike Air Force One. To start off, I'd like to talk about the creator of the Air Force One, which is this guy, Bruce Kilgore. Now, Bruce Kilgore had a career of designing way before he was approached by Nike, but he didn't design shoes. He was more of a designer of cars and household appliances. Now, Bruce is mainly known for designing the Air Force One, but he's also worked on projects ranging from the Nike Air Pressures to the Jordan 2s to his own tennis shoe line, which included the Adversaries, the Ace Airs, and the Avengers. Bruce also worked on projects like the Nike Track Spike, which they worked to perfect, and that won 4 gold medals in the Olympics of 1984. Now, I'd like to discuss some designs of the Air Force One that made it so innovative for the time. Now, the original Air Force One looked nothing like this. In fact, it looked a bit more like that with the gray and white colorway, but it was also only in high top. We didn't get this low cut until a bit later. But one thing that was so innovative about it was that ankle strap, which was one of the first shoes to have an ankle strap, which provided that extra support while playing basketball. Along with the ankle strap, another innovative part of the shoe was the cup sole on it. The cup sole allowed players to move a lot easier with their pivoting, along with a threaded outer sole, which allowed for a lot easier movement on the court. Now, the most innovative and most important part of this shoe is that it contained air technology in it, and it was the first basketball shoe to contain air technology. This was adopted from the Nike Tailwind. This was very important to basketball culture because basketball shoes up to this point were very uncomfortable, and players would recall wearing up to 5 or 6 pairs of socks just for the cushioning that the shoe never provided. Having all this added cushion into your shoe meant that players could last a lot longer in games and not have to need that extra support from things that weren't from the shoe. Now, with this shoe being the first basketball shoe to have air in it, they used a double parallel to pay homage to the president's aircraft, which is also named Air Force One. Now, the last part of the design that I'd like to talk about is that it was inspired by the Nike Approach, which was actually a hiking boot that Nike designed. And I think it's very odd that they got a basketball shoe from a hiking boot, but they actually did that for the extra ankle support that it provided. These shoes have had several different colorways over the years, but it didn't start until they started making the low-cut Air Force Ones, which look something like that. And they started with player exclusives first, which went out to the original 6 players that starred in the first Air Force One ad. Now, the original 6 were composed of 6 different players from different teams, which were Michael Cooper, Moses Malone, Calvin Nat, Jamal Wilkes, Bobby Jones, and Michael Thompson. All the player exclusives were customized to fit the team of the player as well as the player's personal preferences. There was actually a time where these shoes were almost taken out of production as Nike was ready to move on to their next line of shoes. There were 3 retailers in the Baltimore area, also known as the Three Amigos, which consisted of Charlie Rudo Sports, Cinderella Shoes, and Downtown Locker Room. These 3 retailers strongly encouraged Nike to reconsider their decision. As Nike began to give it another try, they started what was called the Color of the Month Club, where Nike released a new color of the Air Force Ones every single month, and everybody went ballistic over them and they sold out immediately. When this shoe gained popularity, it was mainly in New York and on the East Coast. The people who made this popular are, drumroll please, drug dealers. In areas like New York, drug dealers were commonly looked up to for their wealth because they always had nice clothes, nice cars, and most importantly, nice shoes. As they grew in popularity, they became less of a shoe and more of a status symbol as they became unofficially endorsed by drug dealers. Moving on, I'd like to talk about rap artists because they are probably the biggest reason why this shoe is so iconic. During the rise in popularity, you had artists coming out of New York sporting the Air Force Ones, including artists like Jay-Z and Fabulous. Shoes are an important and prominent part in hip-hop culture, and in 2002, when Nelly released a song titled Air Force One, it boosted sales immensely. Now, like I said before, this shoe was mainly just popular in New York and in other parts of the East Coast, but with the release of this song, it made it a fashion staple and brought it to everywhere across the United States, but especially in the Midwest and the West Coast. Hip-hop icons sporting these shoes led to several different collaborations between artists and the company. You had people ranging from Fat Joe to Travis Scott that have their own Air Force One. This, along with the Color of the Month Club, is really what kickstarted the explosion of colorways that Nike released, along with people doing their own custom colorways, buying the basic white-on-white Air Force One and painting on it themselves. But that could be a whole nother video itself, just from the amount of different colorways that people do themselves. This shoe, I believe, has more colorways than any other shoe out there that I know of, as it has over 1,700 different colorways that Nike has released over the years. This shoe is very important, not just to the sneakerhead community, but also to basketball culture and as well as New York's culture. They are one of my personal favorite shoes, and I'm very glad that I got to share a little bit about them with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again.